Good morning. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Jefferson County Public Utility District for a special meeting of the Board of Commissioners. It is October 13th, 2022 and 11 a.m. With the adoption by the Washington State Legislature of House Bill 1329, providing for both virtual and in-person meetings to be held, Jefferson County will be offering both virtual and online meetings, both virtual and in-person meetings, unless advance notice is provided. In-person attendance will be limited to provide sufficient space. Masking is encouraged. Online participant audio will be muted upon entry. Please unmute at the appropriate time to speak. If you're calling in, please use *6 to mute and unmute and *9 indicating your desire to speak. I'd like to now determine that we have a quorum of the Board of Commissioners. I am Kenneth Collins, Commissioner for District 2 and Chair of the Board.
Jeff Randall, Commissioner, District 1.
Dan Tupper, Commissioner for District 3.
We have a quorum. The next item is review of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda, additions or modifications, deletions?
Could we add an executive session at 1 o'clock for approximately 15 minutes?
I'm sorry, how much time, Kevin?
15 minutes?
Okay. Making a note.
And Joel will give us the legal reasoning for the executive session.
So are there any other changes or modifications to the agenda?
I'll move we approve the agenda.
I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion on the agenda? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor of approval of the agenda for this morning's meeting, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Our agenda is approved. The next item is the manager's report. Mr. Street.
So I'm going to share my screen. I have 5 topics I'm going to touch on very quickly. A couple of them came up during the budget. The first one I'm going to discuss a little bit, and hopefully you can all see my screen. There's a question or a statement on a number of transformers or 6, 4, 2, how we came about some of those numbers is how I think the question is. But right now, I have up one of our SCADA screens that our dispatch use all the time. If you'll notice, there are 7 substations in blue. This is substation, all these substations, there's 7. The one that's blue and green is Chimicum substation, and that was built in about 2009, and it has a new transformer in it. It was designed for 2 bays, but there's only 1 transformer in it. So if you take that one out of the mix, that leaves 6 substations with transformers that are old and need to be replaced. That's where the number 6 comes from. Then there was a question on, well, why did we say we need to do 4? We have 2 substations right now with a brand new transformer in them, Irondale and Port Ludlow. The Irondale substation was originally purchased and put in place so that it could be moved at any time to one of our existing substations if we had a failure. The one at Port Ludlow was put in because of all of the transformers. Port Ludlow has the worst oil reports. At one time, we were monitoring that transformer daily for gassing sudden pressure. So it is not energized the new transformer. We're still running on the old one. Where the two transformers that we're looking at now are for Quilcene. Quilcene is an old transformer, and it's the size, megawatt is a 5 MVA. And so that means it's the only transformer we have that can't backfeed into another during peak load. Also, we have processed the oil on that transformer once since we've owned it. And by that means we bring in oil processing equipment, we de-energize a transformer, we pull the oil out and filter it, we put it back in and filter it. That transformer, for reliability purposes, has to be the next one on our list to bring up to snuff. The second transformer that we're looking at would come into play and I apologize, I'm having a hard time. Kearney substation. This is an old drawing. It's actually Dana Roberts substation. It was built for 2 bays, and it has an old transformer. But for one of our long range projects, we need to add the second bay in Kearney substation. That's the second one in our long-term plan. That leaves us 2 substations that have old equipment, Discovery Bay and Hastings substation. I'm gonna quickly bring up a picture of Discovery Bay substation. I don't know how to do that. Do I have to stop sharing? Share will?
Probably, yeah.
Okay, give me a minute. This is our Discovery Bay substation. And it is a wooden distribution outgoing feeder. I personally have built many, many substations. The last wood substation I built was temporary, and it was 35 years ago. So this substation needs to be rebuilt. As part of the long-term plan, we're looking at new sites to put this substation on. Our property there is up a steep hill, and the property is very small. So we're looking at either coming in and putting in retaining walls to expand the footprint, but the Discovery Bay substation has more issues than just the transformer. So that does bring up some questions. How do we pick where we're going to replace and what substation? A lot of it is determined by the amount of load on the substation and how can we backfeed it. In the Discovery Bay area, if we remember, approximately 4 years ago, we added an intertie on the distribution side to Clallam County, where we can feed the 3-phase from Clallam County all the way back to this substation. So that gives us the capability to pick up all the load that we need to if this transformer fails. And then we could bring one of them that we have at, for example, Irondale, put it in place here and get this substation up and running. It would take a lot of effort, but we would be able to feed all of our existing customers. Quilcene, we can feed all of our customers if we lose the Quilcene substation from other locations, unless it's during peak load. during peak load, we lose some voltage to the Quilcene area. So that was, a very quick presentation. We'll go into more depth in future discussions, but that's really why we have 2 substation transformers in the long-term 10-year budget. We are continually monitoring and looking at the other 2 substations that need to be replaced, and we may add them at a future date as needing replacement. But a lot of this has to do not only with the substation need, but how we can backfeed it on the distribution system. I know that was quick. Any questions on substation transformers? I love this topic. This is a fun thing for me. I've lived in substations, so
Kevin, thank you for the presentation. If I'm understanding correctly, then Port Ludlow substation is running on the old transformer, but there is a new one that is sitting there not being used?
correct. In the near future, we will build a second bay in Port Ludlow. And we'll actually, you have 2 transformers there, the old and the new, and we will run them together so that if one fails, you can quickly switch over. Past my time, in the far out future, when the old transformer fails, we will buy a new transformer for that one, and we'll have basically 2 transformers in all of our key substations. That's how they should have been designed to begin with. When we modify them, that's how we'll build them in the future. And we hope to start the engineering to do the second, maybe spring of 2023.
I just appreciate kind of our ongoing continuing education of how our various systems work. So I think you did a very nice job in explaining it.
Thank you. The next thing. Trying to get things squared around on my. The next question we had at the budget meeting was EVs and how we should move forward. We heard the concern, and we feel we do need to do a better job with EVs and being example in the community.
Sorry, Kevin, just a clarification. So when you say EVs, you're saying like the PUD's purchase of vehicles
To use internal.
having them be EVs. Okay, thank you.
So what we did is we reached out to the state because we had put the trucks that we had with the state on POs and asked if we could make a change. The state came back and said, no, you can't make a change with what we've already purchased. So what we're looking at now, and we're getting some pricing, is to add one more vehicle to the 2023 budget that will be EV. And we've gone beyond that. We've had our fleet people give us a lot of information, and we're starting to analyze who could use an EV vehicle. And we're basing it out a lot on the miles driven and the type of work they do. For example, our meter readers and locators right now are driving maybe 40 miles a day. If they're only hitting 40 miles a day and they don't require, they're not hauling anything, they don't have people with them, to us, those are ideal places where we could put an EV vehicle there and make it work out not only for the PUD, but it would save us some fuel and some maintenance costs. So we went the next step and said, okay, if the metering department, for example, can use the EVs, we need to put a charger there. So in this, an updated budget you will see on the 18th is we put 4 chargers in there. The reason we came up with 4 chargers is we would put one outside our building at 310. We'd put one back at the employees where we keep all of our trucks on the backside inside the gate. We would put one at 210. That's where the meter readers show up, and that's where their trucks would be charged. And we'd put one at 191 Auto Street. That's the admin and the broadband division.
And Kevin, those would be type 2, 240 volt chargers.
Type 2, 240 chargers, 2 plugins.
Dual head.
Yep.
Cool.
So that will be a change. Mike has reached out to the fleet to get some pricing. He's going to work on a small update to the budget. So we've heard some concerns and we are moving forward. I will say today, a lot of our vehicles can't go to EV. They're just not there. But those that can, and that makes sense, we will move forward in that direction.
So could you go back and elaborate on your reference to the state when you went back to them about vehicles we've already purchased or plan to purchase? What exactly did you mean there? What was that conversation?
So if you noticed in the budget, we said that there's 2 trucks that were already ordered. And it was on the budget. They were ordered to be delivered in 2023. So we went back to the state and said, can we change those? Because we don't have them yet. So that's what I'm talking about.
So I guess my question is, why do we need the state's buy off or sign off on changing something like that? I guess that's my question. Am I missing something here?
Oh, excellent question, Dan. I should have been more specific. In the past, we have always purchased our vehicles on the state contract. That means they've already gone through the bid process. We just call them up and say, we want a F-150. They give us the price that they've already negotiated. We don't have to go out to bid. So in that case, we'd already gave them a PO for those 2 trucks and they could not swap them over to electrical vehicle.
Okay, so we're buying through the state's fleet plan.
Yes.
Is what you're saying. Excuse me. So my second point then is, I understand I'm not opposed to EVs and you've made a good case of why it has to be incremental, right? Which is I'm always about incremental. I would really rather we took, incremental steps than to just totally jump out there and take big steps. So my question again, or my opinion is, are we considering hybrids? I mean, the price of a hybrid versus the price of an electric gets you that transition, gives you a little more stability on being able to fuel the vehicle in certain instances. Maybe the cost is not going to be the same breakout. As we move towards electrification of the economy and electrification of transportation, it seems to me that maybe hybrids in the next 6, 8, 10 years before the state gets to its goal dates of 2030, 2035, that's maybe where we should be leaning. And then hopefully in the meantime, the cost of the electrics come down and, things like that. So I'm thinking more hybrids, might be the better option than, what we're talking about, whether it's at the electric side of it or on the, the gasoline side of it.
So what we're looking at, Dan, and to a point, I agree with you that there needs to be this transition. What we're trying to identify, though, is vehicles that truly don't have to be hybrid. To me, the hybrid would be the next step. Once we have some electrical vehicles in positions that make sense for the PUD and the miles driven, then we look at maybe the hybrids for when we send people to training and they're going to go 400 miles. Maybe that's those type of vehicles. So I do think there's a place for each one of them. We're just now trying to go through the process of identifying them.
Yeah, I just hadn't heard the term hybrid thrown out at all. It's either one or the other, one extreme or the other. So to me, the incremental step is we should be looking seriously at hybrids. I'll use myself. I have the Prius. It's all-wheel drive, 500-mile range, 50 miles to the gallon. If power's out for 4 days, you don't have a solar array to hook up to, you run on the gasoline. So to me, that makes more sense from the utility operational standpoint to have that is the better option to me at this point in the progression of where we're headed in the state.
And Kevin, I had brought up this issue during the budget and pointed out one of the vehicles on the state's purchasing contracts, the Ford Mustang Mach-E. I did find out that Transit has one. They have, and apparently there's at least two models, one that has about 110 or some variation of that range, and then one that has 220 or something like that. And they have one of the 110s. And so if you wanted to find out any more about that particular model, they've got it. And it was Miranda Nash who was in the meeting, and she said that if you want the 200-mile one, you need to request the California package.
Mike Bailey did reach out to utility, I was gonna say neighboring utility, but a utility that has the vehicle, and they've just been totally impressed with it. So that is what we're getting pricing for the new budget, because the people we've talked to are just feel it's a very good vehicle for what they're trying to do, and other utilities are having success with it. So.
And I guess the last thing on the type 2 chargers, just encourage us when we get them to think about where they're going, and when they're in public spaces, if we could get the ones that have the highest amperage, kind of the 40 amp versions, I think are the most useful for the public spaces. For our spaces, we may not need that much amperage. Cords get bigger and heavier, but I'm sure you're an electrician expert, so you'll know.
We are, Eric Pryor was looking at the 40 amp solution today. So. If there's no more questions, I'm going to move on to our meter replacement update. So this isn't going to be as fun a topic for me as the substations, because substations are fun and they're cool, and we've had huge successes in our substations. On the meter replacement update, we have a billing issue where in Calipointe, and I don't have a lot of information. I'm just bringing this to everyone's attention now, and we are gathering the information. Some customers in Calipointe are going to have a 40+ read date. Our goal is to keep it around 30 days. They're going to hit 40 because of the meter change outs. Other than that, I don't have a lot of information. There's some work we need to do with NISC. We're going to have a meeting on Monday with billing and Colton's group to make sure this doesn't happen again. These things, this is our first section of meters we're changing out. It's a timing issue with billing and when the meters were changed. I want everyone to know we have daily reads. We have the information. It's just how the bills are coming out. And so that makes it much easier to work on.
Ken's got a question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Kevin, what are we doing to communicate to the affected customers?
Ken, right now, they're running the reports on even who the affected customers are. We've done some outreach. Will talked about doing some stuff on social media. We will reach out to the people. What happened, Ken, is when they ran their report yesterday, it showed the excessive days. Now they're trying to gather all the information on who it is, how many, what the information is. And I don't have that at this time, Ken. So.
Well, I would expect then, as you said, that when we do know who will be affected by this, that we'll be proactive so people, won't be unpleasantly surprised when they get their bills.
They will know before they get their bills.
And they'll still be unpleasantly surprised, but be that as it may.
And to be clear, these were meters that we had changed out, or did it cross over to other customers as well?
Just meters we had changed out.
So it's a smaller group than we know.
So in this billing cycle, I do know we billed 575 people on the new meter system. I don't know how many of, it may be all of them, it may be 2 of them. I just don't know. But it is 575 approximate meters that were changed out. Along the same lines, our crew is pretty diligent. When we got a batch of meters in that we have seen a problem in the meters. They're a very small. We have identified them. We've gone back and looked at the meters we have received, done inspections. So with these bad meters, we're reaching out to the vendor today. We'll send them back and we'll get new meters in. But we have found a problem, not on residential meters. These are on business meters. It has to do with the jaw of the meter base. So there's really, we don't have any concern. We feel it's a batch of meters. The crew brought some over the shop today. We reviewed them. I don't see this as a real issue. And it was caught before we put them in. And so we're forward. They did go out and pull several meters we had installed just to make sure that they weren't installed. So we are moving forward there. Any questions?
So I'm trying to think back to the contract and the purchase order. I know it was back on the East Coast. Were they able to supply new manufactured meters, or are these retrofitted type of meters?
Brand new meter,
These are literally brand new meters.
literally brand new meters.
Okay, thank you.
This is for the meter exchange program. This is probably the biggest highlight. Through our process, the goal has been to catch water meter reads also. And we are starting to get the water meter reads into the system. Still a lot of work there, but we're actually getting the reads in, and we feel that within a very short amount of time, we will be able to capture a lot of the water meters in Calipoint also with the new system, which is, again, we're getting benefit to multiple utilities on this system. And that's a big goal of this project. And it looks like it's going to work and be successful for us.
Hey, Kevin, there's been most of the talk has been on the electric meters. Does that mean that we're changing out the water meters too, or that the new system is somehow compatible with how the water meters communicate so that we can get them both at the same time?
Great question, but it's complicated.
Okay.
With the newer water meters, they will talk to our system. With the old water meters that we have in, they will have to be the module. There's this,
right.
The meter itself, the brass part doesn't have to be exchanged. It's the broadcast unit. And that would have to be updated to the newer versions of W60 or higher. But as those modules fail and their battery in those, and that's usually what causes the failure, we change a lot of those out all the time. We change them out to the new ones. We feel very comfortable that the water in our new system is going to be very work well together.
Okay, so the water meter part is the meters aren't changing. It's just the communication module. And that's a separate effort. And it's kind of sounds like it's ongoing anyway, just as they fail, that we replace them with the newer communication.
Or I believe as we build out on the electric and get those areas built out for the electric meters, we may make a push for some areas to do the electric or the water at the same time, so that we don't have the mileage and drive and have to physically get the reads once a month. Then they could be brought in daily like electric meters.
Cool. Thanks.
One other quick question on the water meters, because most of them are in the ground and some of them are in less accessible areas. Are we gonna have to push harder on customers to keep those meters free of obstruction? Like, will a vehicle parked on it or something stacked on the meter box? Is that gonna affect these meters' ability for us to still read?
I'm gonna say yes, but to what extent, Dan, we don't know yet. It was a little bit of a struggle to get to this point where we're starting to get the reads in and we're getting them all the time. So I'll answer more in a later date on how that works.
Because the major objective is to not have to roll trucks, or have physical meter reads. So I'm just curious if this is gonna help, if we're gonna have to take extra steps so that that is what will happen.
We will probably have to take some steps, but to what point, I don't know yet. The next topic, long-range plan. We've talked about the staff is working on long-range plan, putting a lot of information together to bring back to the commissioners. I'll give you an update. We met with our consulting engineers and the SCADA team. Will was there, myself. There were several people there. And we are missing some key information, primarily end-of-line voltage and a few things like that, for them to really sit down and analyze 100% what we need to do on some of our feeders. The solution and what our goal is we're going to peak in January, February, March. Our goal is in the key areas where we need end-of-line voltage, we will put our new AMI meters in. They will broadcast voltage back. We will catch it. And then we will have the information we need to really know how our system's running. We also are going to have to put some additional communications out to some field equipment so that we can gather the information from reclosures we don't presently have on SCADA, which means our fiber that we're ready to build out, we're hoping can pick up some of these areas, put things together where multiple divisions of the PUD are helping each other out. So we feel comfortable. We will have the meters in place by December. We will in such a way and start gathering information specifically to analyze the circuits we know we have problems on, such as Breaker Lane, that area. We do on our December meeting, it's going to change a little bit, and staff is going to bring to the board some recommendations to have a capacity charge or something like that for new construction. We have met with PLA, and they have several subdivisions being designed and worked on now. We met with them a week ago Friday and said, okay, you can put your conduit in, you can do your infrastructure work, but when you pay for that option, you need to be aware that staff is going to take a recommendation to the commissioners so that a new customer has to buy into the system. And by that, it's okay, we have 20,000 customers today, and their home is part of our existing system. A new home should pay to get equal share of the system. And that's how we would fund some of these bigger projects that we have to have for loading purposes in these areas. So like I say, we met with PLA. They have these charges already that they charge their home division. For example, sewer has a big charge up front for new customers to connect to. So they were very good with that. They are one of many people we'll start visiting with and letting them know that as staff, the recommendation will be made. I'm not sure what the board will do, But it is, to me, a lot of utilities use this so that new customers are not only paying for the infrastructure they need to run, but they're paying for old infrastructure that has been paid for by previous customers. More to come on that item.
Hey, Kevin, before you leave that one, are you planning to do any outreach to Waputa to find out, as you say, other utilities are doing it, but to have some good information on what other PUDs are charging that are doing it? Like a survey or something like that?
We'll do a survey. We hadn't talked about it internally to do something with Waputa, but we can put it out there. How do they recoup their costs? And that's really what we're talking about doing, is recouping our costs.
Okay.
I will tell you this, in my past, a lot of boards will try to encourage new construction by keeping all costs low, and that works. I just don't think that's going to work for our PUD, but we will do a survey with Waputa and see how they recoup their costs.
Ken, we've got a question.
A comment. I do a lot of work with PSE and a lot of other utilities. Most of the PUDs do charge something along the lines of Kevin's discussing. But Puget Sound Energy has what they call a margin allowance of $5,600. So it's their cost of permits and construction and all of that minus the $5,600. Typically, connection fees for a new home are about $2,000 plus whatever amperage fees they charge for it. So the idea of charging a large charge to a new home just raises the price of the new home to the buyers. So
Thanks.
Any other questions on that one? And then
I guess if I could offer a suggestion. So when you do come back in December, and I presume you would have some numbers of what staff's recommending, I guess I would recommend considering kind of saying where the numbers are coming from. This number kind of represents this calculation, and whether it's a share or a percentage or however you're coming up with that number, and maybe consider like a range of alternatives of lower to higher, just to give us some and then what it's expected each one will generate in terms of revenue per year. I think that would be helpful for the commissioners.
And in my past, other utilities do have a differentiation of a single home, 4 homes, 30 homes. There is leeway there to, or like an individual homeowner versus a developer, but there'll be a lot of options to the board for this project.
Ken's got his hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Joel, if we don't charge the full cost for providing service to new developments, are we making a gift of public funds?
No, I don't think that is a concern here, because, we're providing services to folks. And, it's more of an equitable adjustment. I guess my counsel at this point is that, it is an equitable discussion. I mean, you're talking about existing ratepayers who've paid, for the system, and new connection, at some point, and I know in regard to Port Ludlow, at least some of the development there sort of tips us over to where we need to add capacity. And so there's a lot more, that those last few new customers require us to obtain, spend a lot more money to address the capacity issues. And it's you're trying to, much like in a rate making discussion, you're trying to balance what's fair for existing customers versus new customers. And I'll be interested to see what other utilities have done around the state. We've traditionally, I think, handled this through contribution and aid of construction, but that I think that's more on the commercial side rather than the residential side. So I agree you should look at varying ranges, but at some point there's some absolute cost, and there's a question of fairness for existing customers versus new. So.
Thank you.
And I've gone well over the time I allotted, but the only thing I will say, and this will be visited on Tuesday at our regular board meeting, is the NRECA broadband in DC. Staff is going to bring some options forward for that project. And then it'll be a board decision whether we participate or not at that time. So
When were you planning to bring that to us?
Tuesday, the 18th. I was going to do a little bit today, but I apologize. I was hoping to be done at 11:30 for Will to jump in. So, and I appreciate everybody. Like I say, the substations, the chargers, the meter replacements, these are all great projects that the PUD is working on. And our people work extremely hard and they do us a very, very good job. So thank you.
Will, take it away.
Okey doke. Let me share my screen.
And Will, I just saw, I don't have my Zoom up, so I just saw that there were some chats on there. I don't know if any of those were related to questions or not.
Just ELA, and I typed in Port Ludlow Associates. Yep.
Oh, I didn't. Well, we didn't get busted on that one. We got busted online, so that counts too. You're having a conversation before the meeting about using acronyms, and it's always okay to ask what we're saying on an acronym.
Okay. So I'm going to just give an overview of broadband projects right now. I'll discuss some of the items that'll come up later that we're asking for. But we'll hold the voting section till afterwards when we have the requests.
So Will, one question.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
One question before you get going. The map you're showing does not match the map in the packet. So
Right.
just-
The map's been updated and I will switch it back out in the packet. Okay, so I just wanted to go over just kind of the overarching objectives we have in our broadband expansion program. The big one is what we've been working lately with all these grant projects is to extend our fiber network to all of our unserved customers in the electric service territory. Outside of the electric service territory, we've been partnering to assist with connections. We partnered with Mason One and Hood Canal Communications to support their efforts in Brennan. And we partnered with the Hoh Tribe out on the west end. We'll continue those efforts. We have worked to fund our construction and the expansion with state and federal grants and loans. We're continuing to do that. And extend the existing network where it's financially viable. And everywhere we build, we want to build a future-proof, reliable, affordable network to improve the quality of life for our customers. What we're going to go over today is the Reconnect application info that we're going to ask for your authorization to move forward with. Some of the current projects in review. We're going to look at the take rate analysis that Doug Dawson put together for us. Connection charge options for folks within the area beyond 60% or immediately adjacent, and then some of the outreach plans and our timelines there. Current projects underway. You guys have seen these before. We now have funding and contracts for the for the East Discovery Bay project, the Jefferson North project, the PT Business Fiber, and we're just waiting for the final DocuSign contract on the Olympic Fiber Corridor. That's from the NTIA. And we're waiting for our DocuSign with the state. The state has already accepted and contracted with NTIA. The main item that we're hoping for authorization on today is our USDA Reconnect application. We are pursuing a 50-50 grant loan. Since the last time I presented, we have talked with our GFR and consulted more with Doug Dawson and
And GFR
CCG.
stands for.
General Field Representative from the USDA. It's our telecom rep, basically. Sorry
you.
about that, guys.
Thank you.
Yep. We can apply our state match. WSB or Washington State Broadband Office has awarded us $4.9 million as a match for our Reconnect application. We can apply that as cash match to our 50% request, which this is confusing, which means instead of borrowing 50%, we borrow 25%. So that brings our, and you'll see the amount down quite a bit. The final determination of the interest rate and the term of the award is set after the application is made. I spoke again with the GFR, the General Field Representative, and the standard is 25 years, especially if we use the USDA Reconnect depreciation schedule. Doug Dawson is estimating 3.5% on the interest rate. Their 100% loan is a 2% interest rate, but they don't give you the final amounts until we complete the application. Go ahead.
I didn't see what the interest cost would be because I didn't know the length of term either. Do you have that number available as to what the actual interest on the loan over 25 years would be?
I don't have it with me today, but I can provide it afterwards, at least what we're projecting it to be.
And we had a question in the back.
I did a quick calculation earlier to be over $2 million.
So the loan is for rural areas only, with towns have to be less than 20,000 residents, which we fit in. The served area is a little confusing, and we're going to get to some talk about that and why the maps are a little bit different than before. 25.3 over a wire line is the standard that we're going with. That's the most competitive level. In the application, it says up to 50% of the residents in there can have up to 120. And the determining what is actually 120 versus what's reported is difficult, and we'll get into that in the future slides.
One other quick question as we move along here. So because this is a loan, it's through the federal government, but the state's supplying grant match money, would this funding be subject to a challenge at some point in some way?
Every application we make is subject to a challenge, and I'll address it a little bit more as we move forward. One of the reasons why we decided to apply for the 50-50 grant loan is that we went through the scoring criteria on other options, and we're automatically going to miss on a couple of points. We don't have any tribal areas, and we don't have any what are considered socially vulnerable communities. We certainly have a number of areas with poverty and low economic activity, but according to the USDA's maps, we don't have any residents or any qualifications here. So we're automatically going to score a little bit lower. And when we looked at some of the other 100% grant options and looked at the awards for the last round, we didn't feel that we could compete, which is why we chose the 50-50.
It's really a bummer that being rural and poor doesn't qualify as socially impacted or whatever that term you used. Because
Yeah,
that's
there are-
basically what we are.
Well, I mean, the last round of awards went to the middle of Alaska, the desert in the Southwest, areas that they've got us beat on. rural
Really
and poor.
remote and really
Yeah, yeah.
challenged. Okay.
Yep. So cost summary and the project summary here. As I said, I'll show you the map in a second. We actually had to drop back our passings and customers from the last map that I presented. So we're down to 991 passings, 653 connections. We've got the budget then for each item. We'll be asking for a grant for $8,476,111 dollars. And then we're splitting up between US loan, state matching grant, the remainder of the same 8,476, but 4 million from 4 million from each. Commissioner Tupper.
So not knowing the maps quite yet, what we're really looking at. And again, this is a big bite at the apple. Pretty aggressive. I'm just kind of looking if, the most unserved areas are debatable, but I'm just wondering if a smaller ask might be a better way to go with, like, say, the Coyle Peninsula. I mean, did we really take a good look? I know it's a matter of revenue versus cost, is trying to get customers and by passings and that sort of thing. So I get all that, but did we make an attempt to really downsize this to a little bit smaller bite at the apple? And I'll just use the Coyle Peninsula as an example of maybe that area and some of the Thorndike. I don't know what the map's going to look like.
Yeah, I can show you the maps. We did not, because it's so much effort to apply for these grants to begin with. It's much easier to apply for it all in one than to make multiple applications. So just was with building from Quilcene to Gardner, if we can put in one app and take up all of that space, it saves so much more time. At least from the application side, from the construction, if we're building two areas, I can't say that it saves time. We still have the same distance to span. This is, you can see here this is the old map on the left. That is the area that we presented to you guys last time. And it had, I want to say 1,600 passings and 1,200 connections. We sent that to the state. They sent back concerns that even though we had verified where WAVE was and where it is not, WAVE is reporting serving some of those areas, and it's very close. And they did not believe that USDA was going to grant us those areas, because WAVE is reporting speeds of 400 by 20. So we'd be automatically ineligible for funds in those areas. Talking with our consulting telecom engineer, Finley, after the report from the state, they felt that it would put our application at risk to be too close to some of those WAVE served areas. So we pulled way back. That's why the numbers went down from, as I said, 1,600 passings to 900 passings. And you can see some of the areas going up towards, what is that? Talus Shores. We had to pull those back on the outskirts of Paradise Bay going to the west. We really wanted to include those areas. We get a lot of calls from those folks. I'm going to have to reach out to them and let them know that they're no longer in the grant areas. But we didn't feel that we could risk putting all the time and money into building this application and then have it be thrown out due to a challenge, basically. So now we've got Beaver Valley and the interior up West Valley, and then the Coyle is our project area, and they're linked together. This is just the meter map.
So I'm going to jump the shark a little bit, get ahead of the curve. And, because of the changing footprint, this comes back again to who's going to pay this loan back, right? The electric division being backstopping this. I mean, I really believe broadband needs to be its own division. It needs to be self-supporting as it can. Now that we're starting to carve out these areas, when you talk about borrowing this money and who's really going to be paying it back, it becomes even more important that we distinguish, ultimately what we think the revenue base will be, but how we're going to pay this loan back over the course of 25 years on a limited amount of possible, revenue generating sources. This is a lot of money to do that. And I'm just concerned that maybe the public support may not be there depending on who actually is going to pay this back. That really is ultimately, we need to have that discussion, as a board. So I'm just going to throw that out. It's not to get you off your points.
Oh, no,
I think that needs to be said as we move forward, as this map is changing, the footprint is changing, who's going to get served, who's not going to get served. It becomes a lot more important, for public customer satisfaction and, delivery of service and that we are really transparent and upfront with how this is going to affect the public, from the cost to who's paying for it. I've said this for a long time, even before I was commissioner, who gets it first, who gets it last, who pays for it, how much does it cost? I think those things still apply, and who's going to be paying for this type of a loan is important at this point, because we may see cellular, we may see satellite come in 5 to 10 years, and quote unquote, kind of take business away from us, and we're still stuck with that loan for 25 years. That's what concerns me about, getting too aggressive and too far out. So just want to say that before we go any further.
Yeah, so in our projections, this does pay for itself and it's paid through the rates returned from the broadband customers.
Will, I took out my little calculator to look at the figures, and it looks like for the $4,238,111, if you spread that out over 25 years, that's equal to about $175,000 a year. If you add in interest, you're up to 175.5 approximately. And if you're looking at the estimated take rate yielding 653 customers times $65 a month, that's 42,000, approximately 42,000.5, and annualized, that's an income of $509,340. So that's a difference over paying back the loan of $333,885. In other words, if you only got half of those 653, you'd still have more than enough money to repay the loan. And if you look at the total picture, to have to put out $7,394 in order to get $43 million back, we're putting out 17% of the cost of building the system. That's a 5-to-1 ratio on the dollars that we would be investing. And it seems to me that if we don't take advantage now of the maximum available funds that we qualify for, the windows are going to close. And the indicators are based on the most current information is that the Fed is going to have to continue raising the interest rate. And what happens when the Fed raises the interest rate repeatedly is that it cools off inflation and throws the economy into a recession. And in a recession environment, this kind of funding ain't going to happen. So if we don't take advantage of it now and do what we can, that opportunity is predictably going to disappear.
So again, I'd like to see staff present those numbers rather than the commissioners having the back of the napkin do those computations. But the other part of that too is
There's something wrong with my napkin?
no comment. So the other part of that is yeah, I get that. If we can get to the 65%, we don't know that we will get to that because there's going to be competition in the present time, competition on an open access network. And like I alluded to earlier with satellite, cellular, other things, we even without competition, we may never get to the 65% take. And it's going to take us a while to get to that 65%. So my concern is long-term, but it is even more short-term, is how we are going to, get the revenues we need to roll trucks, hire employees, do whatever. I get the installation is a good value. I get that part of it. But for me, as a company, as a broadband business line, I'm concerned that the revenues in the short term, and I'll use short term as the next 5 to 8 years on a 25-year loan, that I am very concerned of how we are going to pay that. And when you look at all the other broadband projects we're going to have in place, we already have one loan, which I'm a little uncomfortable with, but at least there's a hookup fee for that, $1,200 for the businesses. This loan, there's no hookup fees, right? That we're treating this just like a grant. but yet we're borrowing a considerable amount of money. So again, I don't like having to make these points. I don't like sitting here and saying, I don't want to do this, because that's not what I'm saying, but I have some real reservations and some real questions that to this point, I don't believe we've done enough math and enough calculations. Again, I suggested, I don't know, I don't think it was an ask, but that staff come forward and show us somewhat sort of a plan for this project of a quarterly. I would like to see quarterly what we think we're going to build in miles of fiber, how many passings, what those dates are, so we have those metrics. And I haven't seen any of that yet. And so it concerns me to give the manager the okay today to sign contracts on a loan. I'm not there yet. So again, I'll stop there. I know we had a question from the public too.
Oh, you answered.
Oh,
So I appreciate that we have a number of additional slides to go that probably are staff kind of presenting their case and their analysis, but I did want, and I look forward to seeing those, but I did want to just chime in and say that from my position, the positions of the commissioners on these different opportunities that we've had presented to us over time, it seems like we're still kind of pretty consistently in the positions we've been in. I don't know that anything has changed, and I think staff is being responsive as you can be to these questions. And as I look at this, I appreciate Commissioner Collins's analysis of basically for every dollar of this proposed budget that's customer money, we're potentially leveraging $5 of outside money to build this. And I agree with Commissioner Collins that I don't think these opportunities come along very often. I agree with Dan in that as you look at this thing, the deal is getting not as sweet as we proceed down this. And there will probably come a time when we're going to say, no, we've got enough, the thing we're trying to swallow going through the snake is big enough. We can take a break, or the price is getting a little too high in the benefit. But when I look at these numbers, it's still better than the PT Business District numbers. I like the analysis that Commissioner Collins is giving of $1 for $5 of outside money. And I think staff is doing as credible a job as you can do kind of forecasting, with what we know. A lot of it, we're just going to have to do it and see. But it seems like it's a fairly safe bet. And just based on my experience and experience of my family members of the alternatives, the other alternatives for these services, I think our customers are going to be hungry for this service. Is still where I land. So anyway, I'd like to see the rest of the presentation if the other commissioners are okay proceeding. I'm seeing head nods.
Yeah, and I just want to add a couple things. To get the 65%, that's over 4 years. The time of the grant building, it's a 4-year period. All of this this model with the 941 is very close to the original model that we presented when we did the business plan discussions. So it's similar payback, similar cash flow items were all to the positive, or we're looking at being in positive cash flow in 4 years. So that has not changed that picture. In every situation, the more customers that we can get, the better off that we're going to be. And we're going to continue to come back to the commission with grant requests and prioritize requests to pick up some of these areas that we've had to cut out in order to be conservative to receive these larger grant funds. So just a little breakdown of what we're getting for the grant funds, what we're doing. The pre-costs are developing the applications and also doing some of the preliminary engineering that gets tied to the project going forward. It's a lot of engineering work. We've just started engineering primarily on the Olympic fiber corridor, Quilcene to Gardner. We're in the environmental review on that project with the state. That environmental review is comprehensive of the whole county, so we'll be able to use it for multiple projects. We should have a finished draft next week, so we're moving forward there. Fiber distribution, that's all the costs of putting the fiber in the poles in the ground. Fiber drops after we build through a neighborhood and we're passing the homes. The drop is then from the pole or the nearest connection to the individual home. Customer electronics are the electronics that go inside the home, the fiber versions of the modems and routers and the boxes. And the core electronics, those are the the bigger switching devices that are going to be in cabinets and in our data centers at Otto Street. Some of the buildings that we'll have to put up to house those electronics in Quilcene, in Chimicum, a couple other locations, and then the contingency. And you'll notice, I think we've upped the contingency quite a bit in the Southeast Jefferson County project because the cost of construction, other costs are going up. So we tried to be a bit more conservative there. Commissioner Tupper.
So the contingency for the South Jefferson project, is that loan monies? What are we using for the contingency? Where is that money coming from in the budget? How are we allowing for that? Is it loan? Is it grant? Is it part of the state match? I mean, what is the contingency monies? Where are we holding that from?
It's part of the entire project and we can pull it from wherever, but it's just going to be for cost overages on other items.
So basically, you've built a budget.
Yep.
And based on the size of your budget and what you're doing, you've included, okay, this percentage of it needs to be contingency, and then you just total, and that total comes back to how much loan, how much
Correct.
everything. It's
Yeah.
it's kind of.
And
back
we will
forth.
have to, in this situation, we have to expend the state funds first. Yeah, and the state funds will be committed at the time of the award. So they will actually they will provide them to us at that time. Just update on the projects, where we are, where we've been. We're still, we started just kind of passively administration. We're still purchasing. We're doing the engineering and the environmental studies, working on hiring, and then, activity just ramps up after the new year as we move forward with trying to do the construction. And we will be starting with Quilcene the Gardner project because it's got the shortest time window, and then moving forward with the other areas. And we hope to have all the projects wrapped up at the end of 2026. But that's an aggressive timeline. This was a question the commissioners asked us to take a look at. Doug Dawson ran a couple of models through his business plan that he had. The cash flow based on various take rates, and you obviously at 30%, we are in negative cash flow at year 10. At 40%, we're still positive with a small cash. And then obviously the picture gets better the higher the take rate across the board. And this is including all of our grant and loan projects. And Doug had the assumption that the tax funding continues. I can ask at a future date to pull that out if the commissioners would like. We are in a big crunch trying to get this Reconnect grant, so it's been a limited amount of time.
It's interesting. It looks like that as you look on the right-hand side on that 2,000 number still seems to be roughly where we break even. I remember that was a number very early on in the strategic plan. They thought we needed about 2,000 customers to break even, and that still seems to be fairly accurate based on.
Yeah, 37% was where it would turn positive.
Mm-hmm.
This is possible connection charges and terms. We have not had the time to do the full analysis on how much, what would be the absolute best return for the level of charge. What I put up here is kind of a table of possible charges, including the 1,200 we're putting out there. What I also put in is a term of payment. Whatever we put in, we have to balance it with how many folks are going to sign up for it, how many folks can afford that charge, and what's the level that they're going to agree to participate. I'm looking in the $20 to $30 range as the ideal monthly term if we were to do financing monthly. But those are just a table. So we don't have a recommendation at this time on what charge to make. Current in our business plan, we did all of our projections based on a $750 charge, and I showed some payback terms. Commissioner Tupper.
So just to be clear, this is if you come in after the build out on the grants,
Yeah.
this is a charge that you would be seeing, as opposed to if you get in before the grant is completed, there will be no charge, right? Is that how we should understand?
Correct.
this?
Yeah, this would be for beyond 60% or adjacent areas, or for those few RDOF customers. Customers who live in an
And again,
area.
this is only an estimate at this point. We'd be looking 3-4 years out, depending on which grant you're talking about, in which area, correct? It wouldn't necessarily, we don't know that this is as solid as it could be at this point, correct? It could be more.
It will be up to the commission. We're going to do some more analysis on the charge and run through some different scenarios to see what's kind of the ideal, how high, how much can we charge versus how much do we expect customers to accept that charge. That's going to be running through the scenarios, and then the payback terms, because if we're keeping it at $20 a month and we feel that we need to charge $1,000 or more, then maybe we try to offer longer terms, but then how does that affect our cash flow? We haven't done those analysis all the way through. So we will look at that. But for the next couple of weeks, we have to get through the Reconnect application.
I've got a question in the room here.
So this is the difference between a monopoly power company and a broadband company. Broadband companies, they charge for the cost of connection. You get a bill for that connection cost. There is no flat rate connection charge. If you go to Wave or to CenturyLink, if you want to connect to their system, they just connect you up and start billing you. I haven't figured out what the purpose of this is yet. What is the intent of this? Other than to recoup cost, I understand that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so the grant pays for all of the folks within the grant area up to 60%. So that covers all of their costs. There's been questions on what do we charge, or how much do we charge folks that are not covered by the grant? One option is, of course, free, that we just cover that cost as well. If we're building in the area, and we can build that in, we can have modeling that shows, because we still will be getting a monthly service. Even if we're selling wholesale, we're still getting some money back per month.
And presumably that pushes your rates up a little bit because your revenue ultimately has to cover the costs.
Yeah, the term free is one we should probably avoid.
No charge.
I mean, it really
Yeah,
comes
no
back to that.
construction charge.
It
yeah.
really comes back to that discussion Kevin had about a charge for new homes. I mean, ultimately, this is all about the PUD's revenue to provide this service, and where does it come from?
And the balance to get new customers.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The value of the new customer.
And the
Exactly.
difference here between electric and even water is just that we have competition.
And I
So
think-
we do have to be mindful of that and price accordingly.
And Joel's got his hand up.
Joel has his hand up.
Joel, can I go?
Will, I had a question about whether, because if you're adjacent to this area, to any of the grant areas or grant loan areas, then you're not entitled to get any of the grant funding for service, right?
Correct.
And do you have a sense about that, that customer pool, like the adjacent areas? Because that, it seems to me that, however the commission comes down on whatever the charge is, that those are additional customers that aren't in the model, right?
No, we presented that in our original business model. I'd have to go back to, it's a couple of thousand folks who are basically just surrounding the areas where we're almost to the point of providing them a passing, or we're very nearby to them. So it wouldn't be much to extend the line and provide passings.
And is that in Doug's, the payback or cost, the chart that showed, are you including some amount of the adjacent?
Yeah, when we start our business plan presentation a couple of months ago, that was the model that we presented, was grant areas plus adjacent to get us the
Okay.
max.
All right, I'm just catching up. Thank you.
I would like to add real quick that Wave, if you're not presently served and you're over 1,000 feet from their line, they do have charges. And that's what we're talking about here. These folks aren't built in, and we would have a drop to them that we would, that's what these charges would cover. And it's, like I say, there's a lot of ways to do it, so.
And if I could add, Wave typically doesn't go into areas where they deem the population too sparse to satisfy their business model. The best analogy for us would be Mason PUD, and they're charging everyone, at least they have been, $3,500, which they prorate over time. But to offer people who are not qualifying for the grants a hookup for these kinds of prices, I think that's very reasonable. It also is important to look at the service that is being delivered, and Wave and Satellite and CenturyLink for sure are not offering people anything like the comparable service that's available with fiber optic cable connections. So I think we have to be careful in terms of doing apples to apples comparisons.
But again, because this is going to be open access and we're borrowing 4 point whatever million, we're doing all that groundwork for them. They can come in and we're the ones on the hook with the loan. They can come in and, you know, eat some costs and take the customers. That's that's one of my concerns. And so anytime you start to have to charge these kind of things, are we going to be able to stay competitive and still recoup the money we have to pay back on the customer base we need to get? That's ultimately kind of my concern with open access. Yeah, I get what you're saying, Commissioner, and I understand that, but this is the competition part of it. Is once we've borrowed the money, we're on the hook for that. They aren't.
Yeah, and we, as I said, we did our business plan model at the $750 charge level, and all of the numbers came out to the positive. We can look at different amounts going forward. Mason 3, they're a wholesale only model, so they're not getting as much of a revenue return as we would get also being the ISP, which from our extensive business analysis, we determined we needed to go forward to do these projects. So how do we sign up? We started the sign up in September. We just did a passive sign up form on the website. We didn't do a lot of promotion, although Commissioner Tupper's newsletter article did yield a lot of folks coming to the website and signing up, which was great. Current sign up results, we probably have over 300 today. But from when I did the report the other night, we had 268 entries, and this breaks down where they're all from. Unfortunately, I didn't add the select your service area until halfway through the process. So 90 folks didn't have the option of selecting a service area. And I have not mapped, I haven't gone through and mapped based on their service address where they're at. 85 folks left very encouraging comments. There was an option for them to pick what devices that they want in addition or and that's the breakdown there. And then their internet speed preference, most folks, as we expected, are interested in the 1x1 gig. And with 32% picking the 150, the base package, almost 10% picking the 3 gig package. So these are all residential, and a few business customers picking 5 gig. So we're gonna, I've had a number of problems with the online sign up, extending from an old website issue that we have spent a lot of time repairing. The current sign up doesn't give me enough tools to make it useful for going forward. We're contracting with National Rural Telecom Cooperative, NRTC, to license their module for signups, which includes mapping, includes speed testing, allows us to do direct mail through them, all kinds of nifty features. So we're going to have that rolled in by early November, and then we'll do a big outreach push to get folks to sign up. And this is kind of the breakdown of how we'll do it. We've been doing, as I said, passive website. We've updated a couple of times. We've done a couple of newsletter briefs about the sign up, but we'll start doing some campaign. We'll do some campaigns. We'll do some advertising on social media. We'll do some display ads in the local papers. We'll reach out to the radio. With the new module that we're going to license, it builds in direct mail postcards that have a unique QR code for each address. So someone can just scan it with their phone and do the sign up right there, right as soon as they get the postcard. What I wanted to do is get those postcards out in November, and after those go out, do the push, giving the folks who don't have great internet access a little bit of a head start so that they could sign up as well and didn't feel like they were left behind by the big digital outreach, when the whole point is we're trying to reach folks who have poor digital connections. So our big outreach will begin in December, and it will then just continue on for the next year, all of 2023. We'll start incorporating more events. I signed up for the Chimacum Craft Fair to have a booth to talk about rebates and broadband sign up. I'll try to schedule something at the Quilcene Community Center and the Gardner Community Center, and then we'll move up. We're going to build a little display area here at 310 for folks when they come in. They can look at what they get. We'll do the same at Otto Street. We'll talk with PT Main Street, do a demo downtown for the local businesses, and we'll just continue making sure that we're putting out the awareness across multiple media channels for the next year at least. It just continues through. Jameson will be making videos. We'll use that as some of the basis for our paid social media. The paid social media has been the most effective outlet I've seen so far. We'll do some we'll continue news briefs in the newsletter and the email, the e-newsletter. We'll do some cover stories on our newsletter. We'll send out some press releases. We'll get on to doing more of that. So we'll make sure everybody's aware of this process and can sign up. That's just through the end of the cycle. So overall, our goal is to get affordable broadband for everybody. I think it's a pretty nice opportunity. That's the presentation for today. Any questions?
So just one last question on the clarification on the maps. Which map is the project represented? Is it the first one in the presentation or is it the second?
So it's a hybrid. I just got this back from the engineers, so I haven't pushed it to Alex to update it on our live map. So what you don't see on the map on the right is the area just is contiguous all the way up. Those are just where the majority of the meters are. So the one on the left, that central blue section, all of that stays. The tip that goes up from 104 towards Tallis Shores and Port Ludlow, that will go. That's the main, and we took off Lower Hadlock, which we'd hoped to include. We had to take that off.
The only reason I ask is I know we'll get there to the right map, but in the meantime, and you're looking for action today, I think that the public deserves and needs to understand who we're talking about, who is going to get served, who isn't going to get served, and who's paying for this ultimately, whether it's in the short term or the long term, and how we're going to track that is important. And I'm still not sure. I heard it said today that broadband revenues are going to pay for it, but that's not what I've heard over the last 2 months. So I'm still a little uncertain. It's that, electric division is backstopping this or whatever. We're going to run it through the electric, side. I'm still not sure how we're going to track, in particular this, because it's such a large amount that we're borrowing, how we're going to cover that. Who really is going to be paying for it? Those two items, who really is paying for this and who really is going to have an opportunity to be served?
Yeah, so we will have, this shows who's going to be served by this grant. The other areas show the other different project there. that's come through. And as I said, we will have, we have the new module for the signups. It'll be able to show percentage, it'll give you a live dashboard of how much will be, how many signups will have been there, so we can track all of that. It'll also be able to cluster folks who are outside of the area, which is right now, I don't know what to do with that data. If you're not in a grant area, it's just going to sit on a spreadsheet. That new data will be able to be live on a map, and then we can, if enough areas show up, we can consider serving them or issuing cost of service. But all of our projections, all of our business plans have the broadband ratepayers paying for all of this development. We are subsidizing it with the tax funds for the next number of years. And we do benefit from the partnership with electric because we are using so many poles and so many shared resources. That's all I have on that one. That's my presentation. Any other questions?
Ken's shaking his head. No, I thought you did a really nice job of taking questions as we went. We've got an audience comment or question.
Just a question, we've seen that map, but are there gonna be better street level maps that show the dividing lines so that you can tell if you're not in the area, you know, how far away you are?
Or like a zoom in option.
Yeah, zoom in option, yes.
Yeah, that exists right now. I can show it.
We actually used that at the fair. It was really cool.
Oh.
When people would come up and ask about where we could interactively zoom in really close.
I know that you guys have it, but it's.
No, it's on the
access.
website. No, it's public. You can search by address and see if you're in or just outside by street. You can have a satellite view.
Presumably, again, the boundaries of things will change as we continue to
Yeah.
modify
That's
and
the hard part.
firm up what the grant boundaries are.
And
So-
we're changing the map. The problem is that we got the notification of award from the state. And like I said, they flagged those areas of concern. And so we had to quick and scramble and redo the whole plan
Wow.
over last weekend. So yeah, it was a little bit of work.
You spent your weekend. huh?
That's how I spent, yeah, as well as going to the EV event. Yeah, so yeah, I could type in it. Zoom in.
Okay.
So
Right.
I think we need to move forward, given the remaining time that we have. And on that, I want to move that the Board of Commissioners authorize the general manager to take all necessary steps to apply for the Reconnect program, USDA, and execute related grant and loan agreements.
Just a clarification, Ken, you're moving that resolution that's in the packet.
Yes.
Okay, I will second that motion.
Is there further discussion?
Dan's got his hand up.
Yeah, so on this resolution, I want to be clear about what it looks clear, but I just want to be, for the record, you know, I see the term execute related grant and loan agreements. That to me is saying that basically we're going to go after this and we're going to sign to accept it. Is that how I should understand this? We're not just going after it to see if we can get it and then decide. We're basically giving the manager the authority that if we're awarded, he can do whatever he wants. Is that how I should understand it?
That you're not going to be coming back to the board. Okay, we got the grant. Do we really want it? This is our final step as a board.
That's how I understand it.
And what we've been told is you have to be real careful. If you're offered some of these grants and you turn them down, it does affect future grant opportunities. So we want to go after these wholeheartedly and put everything we have into them. So that is the intent.
There would be no comebacks.
Well, there would be no requirement for the general manager to come back to obtain authority from the commission, but it certainly could be expected that the general manager would provide updates on the process.
And I mean, the board could change our minds, as you say,
Yeah.
down there, say, oh, stop, no, we don't want this anymore, and it could have consequences.
And yeah, and you could, direct the general manager to inform the commissioners on when the actual interest rate is known. I mean, that might be relevant. But this is, I drafted the resolution to authorize the general manager to execute all the documents And just because I did hear strongly from Will in particular that time is of the essence with this grant and loan. And so that's why it's written.
I
in there.
I think we appreciate getting updates on this and all projects like this. Dan, did you have some?
Yeah, so, I appreciate, staff's work and effort and dedication to broadband and to this retail, venture that we're involved with, but this really seems a lot of last minute, hurry up and get it done, and we'll figure the facts out or the terms out later. I just don't think we've looked at this hard enough and vetted enough. Like I said earlier, a little bit of a detailed accounting of how we expect this to play out, when we get the money, how we're gonna execute it, the amount of customers, the timelines. It's a lot of unknown variables that we're kind of, it's the old thing of build it and they'll come, right? My former predecessor, Commissioner King, used to say that, build it and they'll come, as sarcasm. I'm not using it as sarcasm. I'm saying I have real concerns that we're not quite prepared to take on debt. That's my big concern to this level. I realize the 5 to 1 ratios. I understand the needs, but again, we could be saddling this utility and our customers with something that may not be sustainable. And that concerns me a little bit, that we're just a little bit too far out over the skis. I'd like to see in a smaller footprint. I realize there's a lot of factors that go into this, and I realize this is, to me, it seems like too big of a bite of the apple with the information we have at hand. So that's my comments.
If there are no further comments or questions, I'm going to ask for a vote. All in favor of the resolution authorizing the general manager to go forward with the application for the Reconnect program and execute related grant and loan agreements, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Commissioner Tupper, you're abstaining or what?
No, at this point, I have to say no for the reasons I stated.
Okay. So the vote is 2 to 1 and the resolution passes. So the next item on our agenda is the revised retail broadband rates.
Sorry about that.
Oh, man, you're making me go.
I know it's a delayed its motion. Ah.
Just gonna close my eyes till we're
Um,
there.
Okay, here we are. So I think we brought so many versions of the retail rates and the policies and the wholesale rates. For right now, we need to move forward with the retail rates. We're putting the wholesale rates on pause. We're going to have a future discussion of wholesale rates where we try to incorporate some other concepts to give our customers the most choice. But what we want right now is our retail fiber rates so that we can continue to advertise to our customers who we're asking to sign up what kind of service that we can offer. They're asking for approval with resolution today. This would be the exhibit to the resolution. These are kind of the overall explanations of how the service works. You guys have seen this before. I do have a couple of changes from the last version that you might have seen. We have upped the 3 by 3 gigabits per second to 175 from 150. Staff would like to try to create some, so we would have our rates and then we would have some bundles that we would also advertise. So if you take the bundle, you get a couple of more items and it just becomes a marketing tool for our customers. And a way of communicating what the benefits are. So that is the main change. We've got the mesh units that we would be renting. We've lowered the price on the home control app suite. This is going to be an option that will require some marketing, because I don't think most people will understand it. Some of them just won't want it. But this allows you to control your network, set security settings, things like that. And then we're going to be offering the voice over internet phone. So we've got that, and I'm introduced a low income discount for that as well, because I think we're going to have a number of folks in rural areas that are going to want to have some kind of standard voice service, because cellular reception is not very good. The business rates, and we stipulated here, this is still a shared network with our PON rates, unlimited usage, no data caps for the business customers. They get the app control suite along with their product. For the business customers, it also includes a fixed IP address and the 1 gigabit router or a 10 gigabit router, which is the only two options we have. You can see the price breakdown. The additional products will have the business telephone will be more expensive, and then we're exploring some larger solutions that we will either continue as a quoted rate or we'll bring back at a later date with some additional pricing. We don't have on here transport, direct internet access, and other products that we'll be offering in the future for more heavy duty commercial customers. As has been, I think, been said before, we will be back with revisions and extra products on our rate sheet. But this is the standard residential and small business products that we want to be able to offer and be able to advertise to our customer to get them interested in signing up. And that's what we're asking for approval of today.
I don't have any questions. This has been by us multiple times. And I realize it's going to be, even once we adopt it, as we move forward, it'll be dynamic. We'll make changes as we need to make changes, and we need to start with something. So, and nobody question, comment?
Just a quickie, the 150 through 3 gig, does that include the modem in that cost, or is there additional cost for the modem?
No, the modem is included, or the router, sorry.
Yeah, routers included, yeah. Are you going to offer BYOR for your own router?
So everyone will have to take our router, and if they want to add additional routers to that, then they can add on additional node system. They don't,
No option to buy their own.
no option to buy their own, no.
Is that just for system reliability? Is that the goal?
Yeah,
there?
the system that we chose, the Calix equipment system, just so that when we have all our, CenturyLink makes you take all their own routers too, so we can actually see the network and see what's working.
Okay.
And choose afterwards.
Okay. Looks like there's no,
Yeah, I will entertain a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the rates for sale of retail internet services, approving revised rates for retail broadband services.
So moved. I'll make that motion.
I will second the motion.
Is there further discussion? Questions?
Nothing here.
Hearing and seeing none. All in favor of the approval of the resolution as previously stated, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Done deal.
Thank you, commissioners. Oh, I don't think I had my mic on.
Heard you anyway.
I don't know if we have, what time do we have here? 12? Oh, we're not quite to 1 o'clock.
We're not done.
So one more bite at the apple for the acceptable use policies and the internet service agreement. These incorporate the latest changes from the last meeting that we had a few months ago. I think we've removed a few items. We can go, we can go to the marked up version. Oh, I see. Okay. This is the marked up version. So if we go to page 3 of the acceptable use, you can see the sections that we have removed or adjusted per discussion in the last meeting where this was discussed. We took out the line collect or attempt to collect personal information. regarding prohibited uses. Change some of the language and inappropriate content and transmission and in the violation section. And that is it. I don't know if I don't feel it's necessary to go over this again. We've been over it so many times, but I'll entertain questions, and Council Paisner has worked extensively with this. This is the last, the changes that he and I made after the last meeting. Commissioner Tupper.
Yeah, I don't have any questions for this, Mike, other than I don't see any action required. Are we looking at putting this on consent for the next meeting, or what's the course of action you guys
Yeah,
are
what we're
looking at?
hoping to get today.
Yeah, mostly I wanted to see the next steps. Council Paisner, did you want to have a resolution for these? item?
I've been just in my own mind on all things broadband, recommending that we do it by resolution. I think that it may be, some years ahead, people may have questions about what the actions of the commission was. So at this point, if it's acceptable to the commissioners, we will prepare a resolution that will appear on the consent agenda. If that works for you, Will.
That would be great.
Yeah,
Joel,
that'd be my recommendation.
if we make future modifications to these forms, these standards, does that then require a new resolution if you initially adopt it by resolution?
I don't think so. I mean, it's just an established policy that could be changed, but on the other hand, as good practice, it makes sense to follow that up. And I think, it's just, I want to have a record and a trail for us. Because, these are, I'm sorry.
I kind of take that as every action kind of stands on its own. And since this is the initial adoption, it probably makes sense to use a resolution.
Yeah, I agree. I just think it's good practice. And like I said, I want us to have a record of all of this.
So we still need 15 minutes for our executive session. Counselor Paisner, could you give us the RCW citation?
Yes, this is pursuant to RCW 4230-110-1 sub I. And the motion would be to have an executive session to discuss with legal counsel legal risks of a proposed action.
So pursuant to that RCW with the stated purpose, we will now adjourn into executive session for approximately 15 minutes.
Right here. I can disappear.
Can you? I appreciate it. Restroom real quick. Be right back.
Yeah.
Thank you.
See you all next week.
Yes.
We have concluded this morning's business for the special board meeting of the Jefferson PUD. And having concluded our business, I declare our meeting adjourned. Thank you all for your participation.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good day.